Janelle Sarauw is not someone appearing out of nowhere with only campaign slogans and polished photos. Her record is long, public, complicated, and easy to trace. She has been a teacher, athlete, senator, committee chair, lieutenant governor candidate, public critic of government contracts, cannabis reform advocate, LGBTQ public figure, and now a candidate for delegate to Congress. Her supporters see a sharp, educated, fearless watchdog who will challenge powerful people. Her critics see a combative political figure whose record includes controversy, personal disputes, and questions about judgment. Both sides point to real parts of the record. This timeline is a simple and general review of what has been reported, what can be verified, what is alleged, what is disputed, and what remains unanswered. It is not a record of every bill, vote, appearance, post, or action connected to Sarauw, who she was before anyone was watching. Saraw's public biography starts with education and sports. Florida Atlantic University's Hall of Fame profile says she attended FAU on a 4-year volleyball scholarship and earned a bachelor's degree in political science with a concentration in global governance, interdisciplinary social science studies, and a history minor. The same profile says she later earned a master's degree in organizational leadership with a servant leadership certificate from Gonzaga University and became a U.S. government certified grant writer. FAU, Edu. Gonzaga University's profile describes Sarauw as a 2014 graduate of its organizational leadership program and identifies her as the first openly LGBTQ senator in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Gonzaga framed her leadership around service, transparency, accountability, and public life. Gonzaga University. A 2020 St. Thomas Source candidate questionnaire adds more background. Before becoming a senator, Sarauw was an educator at Charlotte Amalie High School, a coordinator at the Department of Sports, Parks and Recreation, chief researcher and special assistant at the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, a part-time political science professor at UVI, co-founder of Sky High Volleyball Club, and a Moko Jumbi for more than 20 years. That background in education, youth development, culture, sports, and public administration shows up repeatedly later in her political record. 2007-2010, Teaching Others. Sarauw taught U.S. history at Charlotte Amalie High School from roughly 2007 to 2010. This part of her life became politically relevant years later because accusations about her time as a teacher followed her into public office. VI Daily News. 2009. A teacher reprimand that later became a campaign issue. A separate teaching-related issue surfaced publicly during the 2022 campaign. In September 2022, the VI Consortium reported that a 2009 meeting summary and reprimand from Saraw's time as a Charlotte Amalie High School teacher had emerged while she was running for lieutenant governor with Senator Kurt Violet. According to the consortium, the reprimand accused her of issues including lateness, disrespectful conduct toward an assistant principal, sending students off campus in her vehicle, and posting derogatory information about CAHS administration online. The document reportedly warned that repeated behavior could lead to a recommendation for immediate removal from CAHS. The article also noted that a prior evaluation for the 2008-2009 school year had rated her unsatisfactory in attendance and promptness and required improvement for the next school year. The Virgin Islands Consortium. Sarauw pushed back, contextualized the incident, and disputed or explained the complaints. She said the relationship with the assistant principal was contentious, partly because the administrator was close to her and her family, and she argued that the reprimand stood in contrast to positive recognition she said she received as a teacher, including being honored as an inspiring teacher and having her classroom recognized during an accreditation review. Sarauw also said she was 21 years old at the time and had grown and matured since then. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2016-2017. The Senate seat fight that launched her political career. Saraow's entrance into elected office was unusual. It began with a fight over whether Kevin Rodriguez was qualified to serve in the legislature after the 2016 election. Sarauw and Bridget Berry challenged Rodriguez's eligibility, arguing that he did not meet residency requirements. The matter became a major political and legal fight over the vacant St. Thomas John Senate seat. After court and legislative action, a special election was called. Sarauw won that April 8, 2017 special election and entered the Senate as an independent. Ballotpedia lists her Senate service as running from July 14, 2017 to January 9, 2023. Ballotpedia. Sarauw did not enter the legislature through a quiet party pipeline. She entered through a fight over eligibility, court action, and a special election. 2017. Anonymous accusations during the Senate seating fight. In June 2017, shortly after Janelle Sarauw won the April 8 special election for the vacant St. Thomas John Senate seat, the VI Daily News reported that she was defending herself against anonymous accusations about her teaching career and character. The accusations centered on her time as a U.S. history teacher at Charlotte Amalie High School from 2007 to 2010. Sarauw said the attacks claimed she had been fired for sexual misconduct with students. She denied the accusations and provided resignation letters and notice of personnel action documents that she said supported her position, that she left the school voluntarily rather than being fired. The Daily News also reported that similar accusations had circulated during her previous runs for the legislature and had recently resurfaced on call-in radio shows. The article said an unidentified man had called the newspaper with similar claims, but did not provide proof when asked. Sarauw linked the accusations to the heated political fight over the vacant Senate seat and said she was considering legal action for defamation. 2017-2023, 6 years in the Senate. Sarauw served 3 terms in the legislature. Ballotpedia identifies her as a former member of the U.S. Virgin Islands Senate representing the St. Thomas John District, serving from 2017 to 2023. Ballotpedia. Her record was not thin. It included committee work, oversight fights, social policy, environmental measures, cannabis reform, youth and family legislation, and public disputes with the Bryan administration. 2018. VI Carnival Committee funding fight. In August 2018, the St. Thomas source reported that Sarauw was working on a bill to strip the VI Carnival Committee of its $500,000 annual funding after what she described as repeated noncompliance and lack of fiscal transparency. Sarauw said the committee had failed to provide requested contracts, bank statements, credit card statements, and sponsor donation lists. She proposed moving carnival responsibilities to a new division of festivals within the Department of Tourism. This will foreshadow a later campaign theme. In 2022, the Violet Sarauw governor ticket would point to the division of festivals as part of its tourism and cultural development platform. 2018, a gun and a dispute. In 2018, a personal dispute involving Sarauw and VI police officer Tiana Hunt became public. Sarauw alleged that Hunt had pulled her police-issued firearm while Sarauw was at Hunt's residence. Before publishing its initial story, the VI consortium reported that Sarauw urged the outlet not to publish, arguing the situation involved her personal life and should wait until after her Sounds of the Virgin Islands 2018 event. Sarauw also told the consortium that she did not assault anyone, and that if she had assaulted someone, she would not have had an issue with the story being published. But because, according to Sarauw, there was no violence involved, she argued the story should not be published. The consortium said it decided to publish, because the matter involved a sitting senator accusing a police officer of drawing a gun, the officer being placed on paid leave, video footage, and a prior police report involving the parties, and VIPD Commissioner Delray Richards confirming that an investigation had been launched. The consortium also said it withheld certain details from the January police report and video footage because the investigation was ongoing. VI Consortium. According to the VI Consortium, Attorney General Claude Walker later cleared Hunt of wrongdoing after reviewing the evidence and meeting with both Sarauw and Hunt. Walker said there was no probable cause to file charges against Officer Hunt and that Hunt did not act inappropriately. He also noted that Hunt was in her own home. The consortium article also reported that VIPD Commissioner Delray Richards confirmed Hunt was still on paid leave at the time while VIPD's internal review continued. Richards said the incident reportedly occurred on March 24, 2018, at Hunt's residence and involved Sarauw, Hunt, and another woman. The article reported that a January 14 police report filed against Sarauw alleged that she had gone to Hunt's residence after 1:00 a.m., pounded on Hunt's windows, and refused to leave when asked. The consortium also reported that it obtained 2 videos showing Sarauw outside Hunt's residence, while Hunt could be heard asking her to leave. Saraw's public response at the time was to separate the matter from her public work. In a March 25 statement quoted by the consortium, she said the issue was personal and had no bearing on how she performed her job as senator. She said the Virgin Islands was still recovering from 2 Category 5 hurricanes and that residents needed roofs, windows, and homes, not details of her personal life. According to the VI Daily News article, Attorney General Claude Walker said he did not find probable cause to file criminal charges against Hunt after Sarauw accused the officer of brandishing her gun during a dispute. Walker said Hunt did not act inappropriately, and the Justice Department closed its investigation. The same article noted that Police Commissioner Delray Richards said an internal police investigation would continue because VIPD had to review any complaint involving display or use of force. 2018, Small Bill Real Impact. In October 2018, the Virgin Islands Free Press reported that the Senate voted to ban plastic drinking straws as part of the territory's broader plastic bag ban. The article attributed the amendment to Sarauw, who argued that plastic straws harmed the marine environment. This fits with her later 2020 candidate questionnaire, where she cited environmental legislation as one of her policy lanes. In her 2020 questionnaire, Sarauw pointed to Act 8133, which banned plastic straws, and Act 8185, which prohibited importation and sale of toxic sunscreens that harm marine life. She also said she had drafted legislation targeting styrofoam and single-use plastics. St. Thomas source. 2019, 48 bills. Was it ambition? In January 2019, the VI Daily News reported that Sarauw was leading the 33rd legislature with 48 bills introduced, including a bill to legalize recreational marijuana. Sarauw rejected the idea that she was merely trying to preempt colleagues, saying some bills were resubmissions from the prior legislature, and that lawmakers are supposed to revise outdated laws and fix policy. This is important because it supports the argument that Sarauw was not just a critic from the sidelines. She was a high-output legislator. The criticism, however, was that submitting a large number of bills early could also be seen as preempting other lawmakers' authorship. She was active, and the volume drew questions. 2019. Brian Cabinet picks Every Ship Needs a Captain. In May 2019, the VI Daily News reported that Sarauw criticized Governor Bryan for late cabinet appointments, arguing that delays in nomming leaders for agencies such as VITEMA, Human Services, and VIPD had compromised hurricane preparedness heading into the 2019 season. She connected the issue to lessons from Hurricanes Irma and Maria, and argued that Bryan should have prioritized emergency management leadership earlier. Government House pushed back, saying leadership had remained in place at the agencies and that the criticism sounded like political talking points. Sarauw responded with a simple metaphor: every ship needs a captain. 2019, moving cannabis forward carefully. In October 2019, the legislature's Committee on Rules and Judiciary, chaired by Sarauw, considered nominations to the VI Cannabis Advisory Board. The legislature reported that one nominee moved forward while another was held in committee. Sarauw raised concerns about inter-island transportation of medicinal cannabis through federal zones, warning that residents could face legal problems if the territory did not handle implementation carefully. Legvi, org. 2020, Rules and Judiciary Committee work. As chair of Rules and Judiciary in the 33rd Legislature, Sarauw handled nominations and legislation. In one 2020 VI Consortium article, the committee moved forward nominations including Celestina White SR to the Port Authority Board and Judge Denise Francois as an associate judge of the Superior Court. Sarauw also raised infrastructure concerns around airport and seaport projects, emphasizing good faith contracting and timely completion. March 2020, COVID-19 calling for stronger measures. On March 21, 2020, early in the pandemic, Sarauw publicly called for stricter COVID-19 measures. The VI Consortium reported that she cited the doubling of confirmed cases from 3 to 6, 71 suspected cases sent for testing, open ports, and no arrival screening. She argued that the territory's fragile healthcare system and high-risk population made stronger action necessary. The Virgin Islands Consortium. Sarauw urged Governor Bryan to use emergency authority, implement shelter-in-place action, and stop treating the moment like business as usual. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2020, Women, Children, and Families Act/Social Policy Record. In September 2020, the VI Consortium reported that senators approved Bill No. 330103, sponsored by Sarauw. The bill addressed several issues: behavioral assessments for children, postpartum screening, healthcare standards for incarcerated people, birth certificate procedures, corporal punishment in public schools, and limited monthly leave for GVI parents or guardians to attend school matters. Sarauw later described this as the Women, Children, and Families Act and framed it as a holistic approach to strengthening families. In her 2020 candidate questionnaire, she also tied it to crime prevention and community health. 2020, BMV Facility Funding. In September 2020, the VI Consortium reported that a Sarauw-sponsored bill made up to $800,000 available to renovate a Crown Bay building as a temporary home for the St. Thomas Bureau of Motor Vehicles. The original BMV facility was described as badly deteriorated and awaiting demolition and replacement. The Virgin Islands Consortium. Sarauw said the bill began after her mother called her while waiting outside the St. Thomas BMV in the rain. After visiting the facility, she described seeing flooding, papers piled up, wall separation, and employees working in poor conditions. She framed the bill as a solution-driven response, saying policymakers should not only criticize agencies but also propose solutions. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2020, the numbers didn't add up and she said so. In September 2020, Sarauw was one of the vocal dissenters against Governor Bryan's debt refinancing bill. The governor defended the plan as a way to generate $85 million per year for 3 years and accused opponents of acting politically. Sarauw responded that disagreement was part of democratic checks and balances and said the numbers did not make sense. The Virgin Islands Consortium. The article explained that the plan used the territory's debt service reserve funds as part of the claimed $85 million annual revenue, and that negative cash flow impacts were projected later in the agreement. Sarauw was one of 5 senators who voted against the measure. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2020, WAPA fight. When he vetoed, she called the governor out and kept going. In October 2020, after Governor Bryan vetoed WAPA oversight-related bills, Sarauw blasted him for what she described as coddling WAPA and refusing to hold the authority accountable. The VI Consortium identified her as a primary sponsor of a WAPA oversight bill. Bryan argued the legislation violated separation of powers principles. Sarauw argued WAPA was not simply an executive branch instrumentality and that legislative oversight was appropriate. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2020 Re-election Platform. In her 2020 St. Thomas Source Candidate Questionnaire, Sarauw described her priorities as fiscal discipline, disaster recovery projects, workforce development, transparency, jurors, cannabis implementation, crime prevention, family policy, and environmental protection. She said she held regular Facebook Live constituent time sessions, issued quarterly reports, and published a financial report. She also said she would avoid unfunded mandates, supported restructuring jurors along with revenue measures, voted in favor of medicinal marijuana, moved cannabis board nominees as rules chair, and supported environmental bills around toxic sunscreen and plastic straws. November 2020, stripped of rules and judiciary chairmanship. After the 2020 election, the VI Consortium reported that a new 10-member Democratic majority had formed for the 34th legislature, with Donna Frett Gregory selected as Senate President. The same article reported that Sarauw, although entering her third term, was not part of the new majority and was stripped of the rules and judiciary chairmanship, which the article described her as having managed in an exemplary manner during the 33rd legislature. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2021 Reaction to Governor Bryan's State of the Territory. After Governor Bryan's 2021 State of the Territory address, the legislature reported that Sarauw planned to use her Disaster Recovery and Infrastructure Committee to examine federal hurricane recovery funding, healthcare infrastructure, HUD funding, and subcontractors. The release also said she found the governor's address lacking timelines and that parts of his discussion on the environment and brain drain lacked substance. Legvi.org. 2022 Infrastructure and Disaster Recovery Oversight. In 2022, Sarauw's Disaster Recovery and Infrastructure Committee received updates from VIFHA and WAPA on disaster-related projects, including housing repairs, CDBG doctor programs, WAPA infrastructure, composite poles, microgrids, and FEMA assistance. The legislature reported that Sarauw emphasized homeownership as one of the most essential issues of the time. Legvi.org. May 2022, Violet Sarauw campaign launch. In May 2022, Senators Kurt Violet and Janelle Sarauw announced their independent campaign for governor and lieutenant governor. The VI Consortium reported that the room filled with hundreds of supporters and that the campaign argued the Bryan administration had not made meaningful progress on education, health care, disaster recovery, and other issues. The Virgin Islands Consortium. Violet emphasized public education, healthcare facilities, the Charlotte Kimelman Cancer Institute, the Envision Tomorrow housing program, and mental health funding. Sarauw positioned herself as prepared, direct, and motivated by love for the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2022 Violet Sarauw Platform. In their 2022 St. Thomas Source Candidate Questionnaire, the Violet Sarauw ticket listed healthcare, WAPA, education, disaster recovery, roads, parks, and crime prevention as priorities. They connected violent crime to education, mental health, substance abuse, housing, and jobs. They promised WAPA accountability, grant seeking, mental health services, agriculture support, environmental protection, library reopening, workforce development, and affordable health care. The platform also said Sarauw authored the Women, Children and Families Act, Act 8063, and the Equality Act. It emphasized LGBTQ protections, learning loss recovery, youth development, first-time homebuyer legislation, vocational training, and public access to services. September 2022, Small Business Grants Criticism. In September 2022, the VI Daily News reported that Sarauw criticized Government House's COVID-related small business grant program as politically convenient. She questioned the selection process, criteria, and communication with applicants. She argued that the legislature had already passed a small business relief and disaster loan program in 2020, but parts of that bill were line-item vetoed by Governor Bryan. The article also reported that the SBDC said an independent committee reviewed eligible applications, but the names of committee members were not released when requested by the Daily News. September 2022, Bryan pressures Sarauw over cannabis delay. In September 2022, Governor Bryan publicly criticized Sarauw for not bringing the Virgin Islands Cannabis Use Act to the Senate floor. The VI Consortium reported that Bryan said Sarauw had been sitting on the cannabis legislation and had promised in 2021 that the bill would come before the end of that year. The Virgin Islands Consortium. Bryan argued adult-use cannabis would protect local participation, prevent outside interests from dominating the industry, generate tax revenue, and help stabilize jurors. He urged residents to pressure the legislature. The Virgin Islands Consortium. September 2022, Teacher Reprimand Resurfaces. Also in September 2022, the 2009 teacher reprimand became a campaign issue. The VI Consortium reported the contents of the reprimand and Saraw's response. The document reportedly criticized her attendance, conduct toward an administrator, and other school-related conduct. Sarauw contextualized the incident and said it did not reflect her overall teaching record. The Virgin Islands Consortium. October 2022, Cannabis and Expungement Bills Finally Ready. In October 2022, Sarauw announced that her adult-use cannabis and expungement bills were ready after legal counsel released the final draft. She said the bill included opportunities for people previously ostracized by cannabis criminalization and for those who might otherwise be excluded from the industry. The Virgin Islands Consortium. Senate President Donna Fret Gregory pushed back, saying senators had not seen the bill, that the Senate had paid a vendor $13,000 to help draft it, and that such a major bill needed careful review. The article also reported that Sarauw had held authorship of the measure for several years and had promised in 2021 that it would come to the floor before the end of that year. The Virgin Islands Consortium. October 2022, Lieutenant Governor Debate and LGBTQ Discrimination. In October 2022, Sarauw debated incumbent Lieutenant Governor Trijanza Roach. VI Consortium coverage of the debate showed the two sparring over the role of the lieutenant governor, how executive responsibilities should be shared, LGBTQ discrimination, and how each would govern if the governor could not serve. The debate became one of the clearest moments where Saraw's governing theory and political style were publicly tested. The larger 2022 campaign also included documented anti-LGBTQ attacks against Sarauw. Governor Bryan apologized after a supporter used discriminatory language against her during a virtual rally. Roach later accused Sarauw of tolerating similar sexuality-based commentary against him online. Sarauw disputed that framing. November 2022, election loss. The Violet Sarauw ticket lost the 2022 general election. Ballotpedia lists certified results showing incumbent Lt. Gov. Trijanza Roach defeating Sarauw in the lieutenant governor race, with Roach receiving 56.1% and Sarauw 38.1%. Ballotpedia. After that loss, Sarauw left the Senate in January 2023. January 2023, Cannabis legalization becomes law. In January 2023, Governor Bryan signed the Virgin Islands Cannabis Use Act into law. The official Government House release says Act 8680 legalized adult medicinal, sacramental, and other cannabis uses and regulated production, distribution, and use. It also expanded expungement opportunities through Act 8679 and created a pardon pathway for simple possession. Gov. NECANN's summary reported that the bill was introduced by independent Senator Janelle Sarauw and signed by Governor Bryan. It also noted that Bryan thanked several lawmakers at the signing, but did not mention Sarauw, despite her role in the reform and their tense public history over delays. NECANN. 2024, Government Contract Scrutiny and Public Feud. In August 2024, the VI Daily News reported that former Senator Janelle Sarauw had been posting about VI government contracts involving John and German's consulting firm, the Strategy Group/TSG. In German previously served as Governor Bryan's campaign manager, which made the contracts politically interesting. Sarauw highlighted several agreements, including a $2.1 million VI Housing Finance Authority Public Relations contract, a $441,600 OMB contract, a $35,000 VIPD contract, and a $198,592 Bureau of Corrections office space agreement. She also questioned whether TSG received favorable treatment, including raising concerns about gross receipts taxes. In German told the Daily News that since 2020, TSG had bid on about $29 million in government contracts and was awarded $6.39 million, while losing about $22.61 million in bids. Government House denied any conflict of interest, saying contracts go through a multi-layered approval process based on merit and legal requirements. The article also noted a broader transparency issue. The Department of Property and Procurement website, where government contracts are supposed to be searchable, had not been functioning properly for months. The issue escalated into a public feud after businessman Mac McLafferty sharply defended in German and attacked Sarauw online. McLafferty accused Sarauw of unfairly targeting in German, himself, and the Bryan administration. Sarauw responded that the attacks were political and said her opponents were again trying to weaponize her sexual orientation by associating LGBTQ identity with misconduct claims. The article also reported that McLafferty posted a police report that displayed Sarauw's Florida address, which Sarauw said put her safety at risk. McLafferty denied benefiting from government contracts and said he had no government contracts and was simply defending a friend, though the article noted he serves on the Governor's Advisory Council for Gun Violence Prevention and described Governor Bryan as a friend. 2025, a federal corruption trial, the Whitaker reference. In July 2025, the VI Consortium reported on federal corruption trial testimony involving former Sports, Parks and Recreation Commissioner Calvert White, business owner Benjamin Hendricks, and central witness David Whitaker, founder of Moan Ethos Pro Support. Whitaker testified about an alleged bribery scheme tied to a $2.1 million security camera contract, saying Hendricks solicited a $16,000 bribe on White's behalf in exchange for favorable treatment of the contract. Defense attorneys tried to paint Whitaker as a manipulative con artist because of his criminal past, which included wire fraud, bank fraud, and bribery. Whitaker acknowledged his record, but testified that White and Hendricks already knew about it before doing business with him. He specifically pointed to public criticisms from former Senator Janelle Sarauw during the 2022 election cycle as evidence that his background was already widely known. According to the article, Whitaker said that White would talk to him about Sarauw's social media posts criticizing his past. The Virgin Islands Consortium. In December 2025, the VI Consortium reported that during the federal trial of former Police Commissioner Ray Martinez and former OMB Director Jennifer O'Neill. Whitaker testified that his early work for VIPD included investigating people who had problems with Martinez or whom Martinez viewed as problematic. According to that reporting, Whitaker named former Senator Janelle Sarauw as one example. That is very relevant because it suggests Sarauw was not only someone criticizing Whitaker and Moan ethos publicly. According to Whitaker's testimony, she was also allegedly one of the people he was tasked with looking into during his early work with VIPD. The St. Thomas source independently reported the same general point in its coverage of the Martinez/O'Neill trial. According to that source, Whitaker testified that his first job was to investigate people who either had a problem with Martinez or with whom Martinez had a problem, including a police officer, former Senator Janelle Sarauw, and Kurt Violet. The source also reported that Whitaker described being hired to find listening devices in government offices after he had planted them himself. November 2025, Delegate to Congress op-ed. In November 2025, Sarauw wrote a St. Thomas source op-ed titled The Delegate to Congress, A Voice Without a Vote. In it, she described the delegate as the Virgin Islands voice in Washington, a federal office created through the revised Organic Act, with the ability to serve on committees, speak and introduce bills, but not cast a final House floor vote. St. Thomas source. She argued that the delegate's real influence lies in advocacy, coalition building, committee work, and persistence. The piece reads like a preview of her 2026 campaign argument. The office is limited, but it still matters. St. Thomas source. 2026, Party Switch in Delegate Campaign. In 2026, Sarauw entered the Delegate to Congress race. Ballotpedia currently identifies her as a candidate for the U.S. House Virgin Islands at-large district and lists her prior office as the U.S. Virgin Islands Senate. Ballotpedia. WTJX reported that Sarauw changed her registration to Democrat on February 26, 2026, after building her political career as an independent often critical of the local Democratic Party. Sarauw told WTJX she still embodied Democratic ideals and said she could not enter Congress unaligned if she wanted to serve the territory effectively. WTJX News Feed. The VI Consortium's May 2026 unofficial candidate filing list identified Sarauw as a Democrat filed for delegate to Congress in the St. Thomas John District. The Virgin Islands Consortium. 2026, American Express civil debt case. In February 2026, a Broward County civil case was filed under American Express National Bank v. Janelle Sarauw, case No. COCE 260-10434. The statement of claim alleged that the defendant owed $7,656.81 on a credit account and brought a breach of contract claim. The filing described the case as an action for damages not exceeding $8,000, and the civil cover sheet classified it as a small claims matter up to $8,000. Court filings show that a stipulation was filed in March 2026, acknowledging $7,656.81 in alleged debt, plus $377.25 in court costs, for a total of $8,034.06. The stipulation allowed the matter to be resolved for $5,765.58 through a payment schedule. The court later entered a stipulation and order of dismissal without prejudice on April 12, 2026, canceled the scheduled pretrial conference, and retained jurisdiction to enforce the stipulation. This was a civil debt case, not a criminal case. It does not prove corruption, public misconduct, or anything related to her government service. The Broward dismissal order lists SARAUW, JANELLE with the email address jksarauw@gmail.com. The election system of the Virgin Islands, Official 2020 candidate listing for Janelle K. Sarauw also lists jksarauw@gmail.com as her campaign filing email. That matching email, along with the matching name, is a link between the Broward civil case and the public candidate record. 2026, a sealed case and a circulating document. A Broward County Clerk search reviewed for this article shows a case number, DVCE 2600238, appearing as confidential in search results associated with Janelle Sarauw. Because the matter is marked confidential, the public search screen review does not show the full docket, the filings, the parties' full records, the final disposition, or whether an injunction was granted, denied, dismissed, or remains pending. Separately, documents circulating online purport to be related to a Broward County petition for protection against domestic violence filed in February 2026. Because those documents have not been independently verified through a publicly accessible official docket, this article does not repeat the specific allegations, identify the petitioner, publish personal addresses, or treat the circulating documents as established fact. A petition, if authentic, reflects one party's claims at the time of filing. Without a public court order, hearing transcript, or final disposition confirming the claims, the allegations should not be interpreted as proven facts. The only point being reported here is limited. A confidential Broward case number appears in public search results for Sarauw's name, and separate documents purporting to relate to that matter have circulated online. This is not a criminal conviction, not a finding of guilt, and not a verified court ruling against Sarauw based on the public record reviewed for this article. It is included only as a limited note about a confidential court search result and circulating documents that have become part of the public conversation. 2026, public Facebook statement related to the circulating allegations. Screenshots reviewed for this article show a public Facebook post in the What's Going on St. Thomas group from an individual who appears to share the same first name as a person referenced in the circulating petition documents. This article has not independently confirmed that the Facebook poster is the same person referenced in those documents. In the post, the individual pushed back against what she described as a one-sided public narrative. She described the relationship as toxic, emotionally volatile, and complicated. She also claimed the apartment had been shared, that Sarauw's name was on the lease, and that Sarauw had recently contributed financially. The post did not claim Sarauw was perfect, but argued that people were too quickly assuming Sarauw was the aggressor based on appearance, sexuality, and stereotypes. This Facebook post should be treated only as a public third-party statement, not as proof of what happened and not as a court finding. It does not resolve the confidential legal matter, prove or disprove the circulating allegations, or establish the outcome of the case. At most, it shows that someone publicly pushed back against a simplified version of the allegations circulating online. Because the underlying court matter appears confidential, and the circulating documents have not been verified through a full public docket, this article does not name the Facebook poster or any private third party connected to the allegations. What this record actually tells us: Janelle Sarauw is not a cautionary tale, and she is not a hero. She is something more complex than either. She is human. The Virgin Islands has watched her fight, legislate, lose, disappear, and return. And what has followed her through all of it is not simply controversy, but a community that has not always understood her. The legislative wins were real. The personal collisions were real. The unanswered questions are real. What this record ultimately reflects is not the profile of a corrupt politician or a perfect public servant. It is the portrait of someone still unfinished, still fighting, and still asking a territory to trust her with something she has never held before. Whether that trust is warranted is the only question that matters now. A concerned wife of the VI. Subscribe to receive more updates on VI-related matters like these.